Now, this is the fun part. This is where you folks have heard some fantastic presentations from some people here that are really on their game when it comes to the cattle business. And if you will ask a question, then we will, and direct it to one of the panel, or if you don't know who, then one of the panel will take a shot at it, and we'll see if we can get a little exchange going here. So go ahead and head for the mic, whoever's going to do it. Failing that, I will do it.
Cattle ranchers are moving into a new era where we've lifted the bar, and the cattle prices have moved from that 92 cents up to the 250 to 350, whatever they're going to be. But it seems like there's more optimism in the cattle industry for younger people to stay in it, and it's more attractive. And in Western Canada, we're losing the pull that was the oil and gas sector, which is going downward, and the draw of labor. So I don't know, I couldn't grasp that the trend line was going to continue just like you said, and I'm just wondering if you could comment on that.
Great comment. I agree. There's no doubt that things are changing in Alberta, and I think younger people will be closer to agriculture. Who knows, that's what it looks like today. We all know what oil looks like. Boom, back up again next week. I think when you look at, the reason I make that comment is if you look at the population pyramid, it's so heavily weighted even now to older individuals. There's, even if you go 10 years out, 15 years out, I still think when you come to this meeting and you look around the room, that's kind of who you're going to see in there, because for a couple things, I think the population is, there's just so many more older people that are still working their way through the system. And plus the other thing that I think you can all appreciate, it's going to take more and more money to get involved in cattle production, right? And so while there's lots of optimism and there's reasons to stay on the farm, it's also becoming a bigger and bigger business. And I have another graph, and I just couldn't put it in there. If you look at who owns the cattle now, it's all the older people. If you break that down, and in the data I have, it was, you can't find this data on Stats Canada. It does come from Stats Canada, but I actually asked them to do a customized analysis for me. So all the data that I provided, most of the data I provided today, you think, well, I'm going to just go find that on Stats Canada website. Isn't there. And so when I had them do another thing where we broke down herd size and animals by herd sizes by age of producers, you tend to find that the people that own the most of the cattle are in that 50 to 65-year-old range. And I think that's because the younger people, they just can't afford to get in. And now when we got $2,000, $3,000 cows and land prices and everything else, I think it's still going to be a headwind for the younger people to come in. So that's why, and I'm open for a suggestion. Maybe somebody has a lot more wisdom on this than I, but that's kind of how I foresee things, if that makes sense.
Thanks for that, Maria. Just a personal comment. I see a lot of opportunity for partnering here, because if the older people own the cattle and the younger people want to get in the business and land prices are high, I'd be idling up to some of those gray tops and talking about how we're going to take some of the workload off you and share into this future together.
I was just wondering if the graph that you showed with the decrease in producers and the increase in the cattle numbers that are required, if you've taken into account that the opportunity for the older people that are ranching to finally retire because they can sell their cattle for so much more money than they've been able to, and I was wondering if that would reflect a stronger curve in your population of ranchers.
I think there's no doubt the motivation to sell and get out we'll see that will accelerate the level of consolidation. I think if that's the question you're asking, or yes, I agree with you that when you're motivated to sell at the top of the market, and we can talk about the markets are going to stay high and go higher. I don't know. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. There's certainly, we haven't seen prices like this in a long time. So I think if personally, if I had cattle and I was thinking of getting close to retirement, this would be the trigger point for me to seriously consider selling, and I think we've seen that. I think you just talked to your neighbors, how many people have gotten out in the last couple of years when prices are high. And historically, if you look at the economics, that's when people do sell out, is at the high times. Yes, you're forced out during the low times of BSE and things like that, but most people are smart enough to see that, hey, now's the time to get out. So not only do you, that's why on my last slide I talked about there's two forces that drive the demographics. One's economics and the other one's demographics. So it's the sort of the twin forces. And on the economic side, it's the move towards larger operations getting more efficient and older people starting to take some money off the table.
So right at the start, Bruce, you indicated and very aptly said that we're going to require, and the beef production is going to happen somewhere if we're not doing it. Brett, then you came in and you showed us that in the last 10 years we haven't had global growth, but we know in North America we've decreased in our cow herd. Where is that growth happening now? So where are they going to, and where are they increasing that is made up to keep that line steady? What is the opportunity? In BC, we are primed for where we don't have the competition of canola and wheat and whatnot. You can't grow that on the mountainside. Our competition is you damn foresters up there, sorry. But how do we get along with you, and where's our opportunity? Because I feel that in Canada, BC probably has one of the best opportunities if we can work with that forest industry, and if we can work with our ranchers to develop that forage and grow. We probably got one of the best opportunities in Canada to actually grow and become a driving force here in this province. What's your guys' opinion on that for these guys out here looking at expansion? Am I right, am I wrong, and where do we go?
Part of what needs to happen is a discussion with the overall public about landscape sustainability, landscape management, biodiversity being achieved by structural diversity, and the forest stand or the ecosystem. And we have a vision document for forestry that we developed about 20 years ago that was a framework for the Healthy Forest Initiative. And interestingly enough, it includes the same major platform pieces as your roundtable discussion. We have a global perspective, health of the forest, social and economic well-being. Answers need to be socially realistic, biologically defensible, and in concert with natural laws. And if the forest industry would get together with the cattle industry and discuss a healthy forest landscape that includes grasses for cattle, and then market that to the public as overall sustainability, being the green choice for both forestry and animal agriculture, then you get a winning hand. But you've got to package it in a way that the public understands, because if they're out there, they think you've got to plant trees on cattle ground in order to have a healthy forest, you've got to discuss with them why once in a while whacking that stuff down is a good thing and growing grass.
You asked about global beef production has been flat globally. We know the North American production's been declining, so the question was who's been increasing to offset that? All of the growth has been out of Brazil and India. And really out of India. The huge growth the last 6 years out of India. U.S. has been declining, Europe's been in decline, China's been in decline, Canada's been in decline, but Brazil has been a slight increase and India's been a strong increase, and we add them all together and it's flat. Now I would say the Indian beef is a different product. It's not really something we compete with in any of our key markets. Brazil a little bit, but not a lot. We don't really compete in Korea, Japan, any of these key markets with Brazilian beef. But that was the answer to part of your question.
Well, there was a period in my life, probably 25 years ago, when I wasn't feeling centered and I didn't have a job, and I did spend part of the summer planting trees up by Smithers, and it really kind of amazed me, because it was explained to me that before they came through and clear cut these places, what they would do is they'd chop the top of the trees off to collect the cones, and then they'd plant the cones and grow them up in greenhouses, so that when they clear cut the place, they'd have new trees to plant back, and it would be the same trees into the same environment. And I thought, well, that's a really good theory, but I'm out here planting these things and there's no dirt left. There's really nothing to plant the trees into. So you're planting the same trees into a different environment. So because there's been no trees, so there's rain and whatnot, snow melt, and it's washed all the soil away. And it would seem to me that there might be some opportunities there if you can work grass into the rotation somehow. Right, you've got trees that have died because of pine beetles or what have you. I know if you can maybe break that disease cycle for a bit, plant some grass down there, let it grow, sequester some carbon, because you've got some researchers out here who can tell you the degree to which grass will sequester carbon at least as much as trees. There's a public benefit to that. You know, and keep some of that soil there so that, you know, when the time comes that you can plant trees again, there's an environment for those trees to grow in, and in the meantime, you've got an opportunity to grow some beef. So I think there's opportunities.
Hi, I'm Ian Lauder. I'm from Nicola Valley Stock Breeders. Anybody here know that show Mad Men? Seen that show, all about marketers and things like that? After watching the show for a while, it's kind of occurred to me that there's a really interesting sort of agenda when it comes to marketing. And it occurred to me after seeing so many people through my years at university who have no idea how the beef industry works, yet have very strong opinions about how it ought to work. How can we try to improve our image, our brand image, and our brand power when it seems like it would be very slanted and biased if it came out like the beef industry is trying to defend itself when other advocacy groups seem to be sort of the neutral party in the room kind of thing? Like, how can we improve ourselves without making it seem like we're some sort of monster? Because we're not. We're good people. But it seems like it's difficult to market without seeming like we're coming from a very specific slanted angle, like we're on the defensive.
We've now got World Wildlife Fund, Nature Canada. We've got all these people that in the past have been our opponents across the table. By being able to demonstrate, bringing them out and inviting them out to my ranch and touring around. The best one is we had a meeting a year ago in May 13th. All the heads of all these organizations came out to our place to have a discussion. It snowed 22 inches that night. I got to show them calves in wells of snow and said, okay, you want to imply that we're not doing our job to do our best to make sure that this is working? How do you suggest that we function and survive in the environment that we live in, which is so unpredictable and from day to day can change in a heartbeat? We have to be prepared to open up our ranches and show these people. In about an hour's tour of that ranch, those guys have the ability to get a message out faster and more effectively than we as industry nationwide ever would. We need the collaboration that comes with educating these people because it's their credibility with those types of individuals that will gain us momentum. We can do all we want. You take a look at the Farm 365, what happened to them when they started posting. They got ambushed by these people. And it took fellow like-minded individuals who are on the side of environmentalism and doing the right thing to stop them, because we can't do that. We need partners to be able to stand up for us, and that's the only way you'll gain credibility with that group.
Another question for Cherie, I guess, and the round table. So I guess as people that are working on the ecosystem services concept, we have a concern with the roundtable right now, the way that it's running, and we're wondering how much discussion is around the cost of those minimum standards, because it's easy to put those standards in place, and we might be able to afford it now when the prices are high, but if a black swan event hits, you know, how's that going to impact us if we're stuck with that reality? Because that was the experience in the forest industry when they brought in those standards for paper. The FSC label was a way to extract more money from the market, and now you won't sell a product without having that minimum standard in place. So the new costs came into place, but not a lot of new money came out of that.
The whole purpose of doing these environmental impact sustainability assessment studies is to figure out on average where producers stand. And the struggle that I guess we truly do have is to ensure that there is no such thing as, McDonald's wants to call it a barrier to entry. But the reality is the first step for the Canadian industry as a whole needs to be that we need to recognize the issues. And by doing these studies, we're not setting a standard, but we're identifying hotspots. And it's those hotspots that we need to make sure that we're prepared to address and counter if need be, and how we do that. So it is not our intention to create this so-called standard that you either fail or pass against, but become and create awareness as to what areas that we need to be looking at, because if you don't, we will get in trouble.
I'm going to shift gears quite a bit, and this isn't necessarily a great question, but I really appreciated Brett's comment about just do whatever makes you the most money. Because that's what I always think about. And at the end of the day, you know, that's what we have to do. Like Cherie pointed out, the economic side of this, or the pillar in sustainability, is so important. So from other things that you've seen, you know, BC, we're a small province. We have the rocks on one side. We tend to go south with a lot of feeder cattle. And I think a lot about, you know, the auction yard system we have, network we have, you know, what's kind of coming. We talk about price discovery and the lack of a transparent cash market. And how important do you guys see it being to build those relationships with the next level, you know, our consumer? What do you think on price discovery? And what do you think BC should be doing to try and make sure we have good access, we have less price risk, you know, from physical and market barriers?
I think the key answer is what makes us the most money, not just today, but in the future. And I think that's the question you're asking. How do we gear up for the future? That's why I say, I think there's an opportunity to say, we're gonna progress. We're gonna find the best genetics. We're gonna track our cattle through the feed yard. You want to be an area where cattle buyers go, boy, we love the Nicola Valley cattle. There's some good cattle up there. To where you have buyers coming out of their way to come up here and look at cattle. And there are places in the U.S. that are like that, and there are places that are not like that. And there are places that buyers go. Buyers will get to know your cattle, and they know your cattle. And so I think that's an opportunity. I think another opportunity, just looking at BC and the challenges you have, as Haley said, you know, you're a small group, you're in a very unique location, but when we talk about sustainability, what's more sustainable, cattle that graze land that is unsuitable for crops or cattle that graze cropland? Do you get with what I'm saying here? I think there's an opportunity for BC as these sustainability programs go down the road to go, wait a minute, we have some very sustainable beef because we're not competing with crops. Our cattle aren't grazing land that could be growing barley or growing wheat or anything. I think you have, for the future, 10 years, 20 years down the road, you may have some of the most sustainable beef on the planet. You may have some of the highest ratings anywhere because your cattle are grazing land that's not suitable to be producing crops. Now, that's just a side thought, but I think the opportunities are here for BC. You know, I know it's tough just because you're a long way from the feed yard, but you do have a unique opportunity to really build quality and build the equity of your brand here in BC as producing high quality cattle.
I just want to share one, you know, hog the mic guy I am, just one little story about how I think this all kind of comes together and builds our BC advantage. We've just heard from, you know, there's an obvious BC advantage there. We've heard about the logging and health of the forest and how we can work with our timber companies on all this to get that advantage in that forest cover and do some recovery. But we have to, as an industry, you know, get the public, allow those people that we've been suspicious of. We very graciously accepted an Environmental Stewardship Award last night at our Friday night gathering. It takes a little courage to invite people that you don't know out to your property and to explain to them what you do, and to, you know, to be able to receive the criticism that they may have for you, but that always turns around when you make that personal connection and they see some of the things you are doing. So I echo Cherie's thing, and what Kate and I are able to do, and other people that are in this room have done in the past, is to be able to open that gate up and say, why don't you come down along the Nicola River where there's 31 species of fish and 4 salmon spawning groups, and have a look at what we're doing with our riparian area that we're really proud of, that we still graze. And that is going to be a big advantage for us in British Columbia, but only if we access and give people access in a controlled, measured way. I'd just like to thank everybody. This room is pretty much full, and I'm just really happy about that. So thanks very much for participating, and let's let Bruce send us on our way full of and vinegar.